Well, First Christian and all of our family, First Christian family and friends who are on board here, you wanted to hear part two of the topic that we had on last week, and that was what men need and what women want. And last week was a great conversation, but there was so many things we didn't get to, and you definitely wanted us to come back and just kind of deal with some of those other questions. So tonight we're going to be talking about blended families, and that was definitely in Bruce and Penny's prayer of just what it takes to become a blended family. And we want to talk a little bit about singles and dating and how these couples came to be. We did touch on some of that last week, but we definitely want to get into it. So we encourage you to send in your questions. Just go ahead and text them in online. And if you don't want to put them in online because you don't want anybody to know that you asking the question, then just DM it into, you can send it into the church as a direct message, or direct message into Erica. She's handling our production side, and we'll make sure that we get those questions asked, answered, and addressed in some way. I'm not going to say we know it all, but we're going to give it a shot. All right, because we have a well-versed panelists, and I just want to welcome our panelists back here again, and they're coming with their own experience and expertise. So if you wouldn't mind sending up some love, just kind of hit those heart emojis. If you send it up for Pastor Darrell and Minister Veronica, they are over our couples ministry. Also, we have Greg and Minister Kim Harris. If you would just send up some love, and Deacon Damon and Decision Counseling, Tom Nay Ringo. So we can't hear you clapping, but if you would just put some clap hands together up there on that feed, we would appreciate it, and just send some hearts. Okay, I see it's coming up, and just letting everybody know how much you appreciate this team. All right, crew, how you feeling?
Good.
Pretty good.
All right. Good. So we do have some questions that we didn't get to last week, and but before we start on those questions, kind of just want to kind of piggyback on where we were last week as we bridge into where we're going tonight. And of course, we have singles on board, and we have singles again. We had married folks who are here, and so we just have a combination of people who are listening in and watching us today. And so one of the questions I would like to pose to you is, and well, first let me start with a statement, and that is, all of us, everyone, whether they recognize it or not, there is a particular couple or person that they get some indication of how a marriage should be. And when I'm saying whether they realize it or not, people can be role models, or you could be watching someone and not really knowing what you are picking up from them and understanding. And so my question to you, the panelists, what did you learn from, who were your role models, and what did you learn from them? And how does that impact your marriage? And, with that being said, sometimes we learn from a role model of what not to do, just as much as we learn as to what to do. So I'm going to shoot that over to start it off with Pastor Darrell and Minister Veronica, if you wouldn't mind starting that conversation, please.
I would say that my role models were my parents and my godparents. And what I learned from both of them was commitment to God first, and then to one another, as well as having a biblical base or foundation in rearing their children. That was my two role models that I watched over the years that was consistent with it. Now, there were some other relatives that showed me what I don't want. So that was multiple ones in the family.
Okay.
And I think for me, one of one that come to my mind is we had a deacon at our church, Deacon Walton Staten, just a great man of God, very humble but tough, and really just loved the Lord, and just the way he modeled marriage, how he treated his wife. He saw it every Sunday and any church event. It was just no doubt that this was a man of God that was in a marriage that was definitely based on godly principles and godly love. Yeah, he definitely stands out to me.
Okay. Ringos and Harris's, which one of you would like to jump in?
My role model as far as marriage was my grandparents. He used to take her to the grocery store on Saturdays. They would go to the grocery store together. Even if he didn't feel like going to church, he would take her to church and drop her off and come back and pick her up. And just the way they interacted with each other in the house, like they were funny, like they were funny. That's what I remember. My parents were role models, but there were some things like my mom and dad didn't really talk, which I kind of thought was odd. So one of the things that I kind of made it a point to do is that, in my marriage, there was going to be communication because my parents didn't talk.
Okay.
Yeah, with me, it was I was raised by my grandparents. I would spend, the weekdays with one grandparent and the weekends with my other grandparents. So I basically, once I got into marriage, I kind of took a lot from that, from what I've learned from my grandparents, or especially my grandfather, how he always, both of my grandfathers, how they always were the supporters. They always was out working. They was always taking care of the house. And, to a fault, it was kind of different because one of my grandmothers didn't work. Well, both of them really didn't work. And when I was born, none of my adult life, but they never worked, so they always provided. So when I got into my marriage, it was things that I was expecting Kim to do when Kim was working, and it would be things like, so I had to learn a lot about, okay, she can't do this because she works. She can't be like my grandmother, have dinner ready every day or whatever. So that's when I had to start kicking in and making sure I, balanced it out. And also, to be perfectly honest with you, once I joined First Christian, Pastor K, your marriage was a great example to me. I watched you and Pastor Johnson. I watched, and I used to talk to Kim about it. And I used to I adored your marriage. And I just, I learned a lot from just the way both of you guys carried yourself in marriage. So that was a big step for me also.
Thank you. Tomnay and Damon?
My grandparents as well were a huge influence and mentors as far as just learning how grandfather always provided for the household, whether it be financial wise or just being a supportive grandfather or father to my mom and her siblings. And just seeing how my grandmother played her role in a sense, just far as like maintaining the house and, cooking and taking care of the kids and everything. Even when I was little, just watching that. So they played a major impact on, just being mentors. And I've learned, what to do and what not to do. Even though there were times that they did not talk as much, which like him, I found strange, but that was the one thing that I always wanted was communication in my marriage. So those were the ones that were mentors to me.
For me, my grandfather, he worked a lot, but he was a provider. He didn't do a lot of talking, but he was a provider. He made sure the house was taken care of and stuff like that. So for me, I kind of took different pieces from different people of things not to do and things to do. But just to piggyback off of Tom Nay, when we got together, just the relationship that her grandparents had was so awesome. And it was funny. It was almost like she always had this saying, are they your grandparents or they mine? Because they used to call me and we used to talk all the time. And I used to stop by and she used to be like, where are you at? I'm at your grandparents. So they were definitely good role models. And they were just the best. It's just no words really can explain what they brought to the table as a couple.
That's awesome. So, in listening to all of you, with having someone to help give you some direction, what I'm hearing, like you noticed, like, for example, the communication wasn't necessarily there, but especially hearing from on your side, Tom Nay, that the communication wasn't necessarily there, but you knew they loved each other. And like, I notice this usually for like what I call old school dads and grandparents. Their love language is putting food on the table and keeping a roof over the house, over your head, keeping clothes on your back. That was their love language. You didn't hear a whole lot, I love you. It wasn't a whole lot of cuddly. It was
no.
Right.
Yeah. These new school dads, they're a little different, but I mean, you didn't hear all of that. And I just thought it was really interesting, Kim. I mean, Greg, when you were, the expectations that you had of Kim when you guys got married, you know, you kind of expecting her to be like your grandmother who wasn't working, and that just didn't work out that way. I tell you a story. My grandmother, of course, she was an at-home mom too, right? And I will never forget. She used to tell my mom, you know, when Harold, that was my father's name, when Harold turns that corner, you should have his food heated and on the plate waiting for him when he comes through the door. That's how you're supposed to take care of your man. You know how far that flew with Francis Brown, right? But anyway, you know, just the dynamics of it all. I also heard, especially from the Williams, that they were fortunate to have spiritual role models. But let's speak to the couple who didn't necessarily have that. So everyone didn't come up with, you know, a praying mother and praying grandfather, or wasn't necessarily raised in the church. And so when it comes to now, I need to find a mate. One question that came up from someone who has turned it in, and their question was, now that I've been coming to church, I feel like I'm growing spiritually, but my mate isn't. What can I do to get us all on the same page? So maybe that's the question, but let's go back before the question, before that particular question. What do you say to the person who is saved? They do have some spiritual background, but they are attracted to someone who is not in the church. What would be your advice if they were to come to you and say, you know what, this person over here check all of the boxes. The only box that they don't check is they just haven't gotten with the church thing.
That's a tough one.
For me,
Go ahead.
oh,
Kim.
go ahead.
Before you start, can you make sure you move closer to your mic, please? As close as you can to your mic. Thank you.
Wait, Kim.
Okay.
Oh, for me, I would tell that individual, especially if they have a relationship already with God, to just continue to pray about it. And I know that kind of sounds, you know, cliche, but it's the truth. And I say that because in our relationship, that's how it was for us. Mm-hmm. You know, even though I wanted him to come and join me in church, I had to wait for God to move on him so that when he got there, he was coming because it was a call from God to come, and not he was just coming to follow me.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And try to surround yourself with other couples.
Was this when you were dating or after you got married?
This was, well, when we were dating, we were kind of church hopping. So we really didn't have a church.
Okay.
But it was during the dating period and once I became a member with First Christian.
Okay.
Greg wasn't coming to church with me.
Okay. And so it was afterwards, and that's when you started coming, Greg.
Yeah.
Yes. And then after, what it was with me that changed me, other than, God, bringing it to me, it was, I was watching Kim, and I was just watching, what she had. And I said, man, I really want some of that. So, I just, I would tell that person also, give that person a chance just to, you continue to do what you do, continue to keep your drive for God, and you continue to pray, and you continue to worship, and you continue to study, just do things, study in front of them. It was things like that. I was like, man, she's taking time to do that, and I'm sitting here, so I started feeling out of place. And I said, okay, I'm gonna join this. And that's what happened. Then when I got there, like I said, I was hooked.
And really that's the biblical approach, where you may be with, as the scripture may say, unevenly yoked. And I just want to add that unevenly yoked, you can be two Christians and be unevenly yoked. But where you just don't badger that person over their head about you got to come to church, you're going to go to hell, or I've heard of people pasting scripture passages all over the bathroom mirrors and all this other kind of thing, trying to persuade the couple, when really, if you just continue to live a godly life in front of them, that is the best witnessing tool that you can give. But just getting back to the question, should you, going back to you, Kim, you were dating Greg even though he wasn't in church or in Christ. But you continue to pray for him. Would there have been a deal breaker anyway along this? What caused you to stay in that relationship? And what would have been a deal breaker, if any?
For me, the deal breaker would have been the continuous use of alcohol, like the drinking. That would have been, it was a wrap. It would be a wrap. With having alcoholism on both sides of my family, and I mean prevalent on both sides of my family, that was just not that was not the way that I wanted to live the rest of my life. So that would have definitely been the deal breaker for me. The drinking, we couldn't do that.
All right. Okay. Anybody else want to add anything in?
I think that even the Bible shows where, there's some that were not equally yoked, but yet they still were married. So when I talk to couples now, I let them know that obviously, however you want to define your marriage is basically how you want to do your dating as well. And if you find yourself attracted to someone that does not have Christian values, as long as they have values that are similar to yours, that can still be a foundation that you can grow on. But when we come to the relationship coaching, we always bring that to both spouses to let them know that it's better to start off from the same foundation. Not saying that you can't get there, but it just makes it a little bit easier, because where that really comes into play is during those tough times. If you are already a Christian and you know that our marriage is based on Christ, you have a tendency to lean toward Christ-like actions, where if you're not, you may have a tendency to bring up things from the past.
Yeah, I've kind of seen it also, both ways. I've seen where you may have had a couple and one was not in Christ and the other one was, and it was a good marriage, that may just let them, they were okay with their mates Christianity and so forth and so on. And then on the other side, where I could see where it was a challenge, where the both of them were not saved initially when they got married. Then one comes to Christ. And now hubby didn't marry a saved person. Hubby married an unsaved person. And now she's saved and the game is changing. And so then the problem comes in when girlfriend now wants to tie and he doesn't understand that concept at all. And that's where, you know, a whole lot of stuff can come into play. So it can be challenging, definitely when you have definitely when it comes to your faith and what you believe and what you hold fast to. And if you have a mate who is not on the same page with you, that can become a really a challenging thing. So you now have a couple, you know, a woman a wife, or it could be a husband who wants to now tithe, but now the struggle is, do I do it and create dissension in my marriage? You know, do I still? And to be honest, my advice to them would be, you don't want to create dissension. You just continue to pray about that, and God will open up an opportunity, you know, hopefully that he eventually will come on. Just continue to pray for him. Because I think if you just went on and just, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, that's not going to draw him any closer into Christ at all. If anything, it just probably push him away. So it can definitely be challenging on that part. So again, coming back to that question, this person is saying that I've been coming to church when I feel like I'm growing, but my mate isn't. You've already basically answered that, and that is just continue to live a godly life in front of them, and just continue to be in prayer and let God take care of the rest. He's very good at handling that.
I would add a consistent life in front of him. If you say you're going to follow Christ, you can't engage in the things that they want, or you can't, you know, like we said earlier, badger them. But I would say live it consistently, that they will see, oh, right, this person really is true to God. And then that can help draw them.
Yeah. It'll either help draw them or repel them.
Exactly.
You just have to go with, you know, which way it would go. And that's what can just really put you in a really difficult spot, you know. So it is important that in the dating phase, that if you are a Christian, to look for someone who is also a Christian. And again, like I was saying earlier, it doesn't mean that you necessarily going to be even, just because the person is a Christian, doesn't mean that's the person for you. You still got to vet that out.
Yes, and I would say that because sometimes that is a ploy to some ways of getting a tactical way of approaching another person is to say that I'm a Christian. And from a woman's perspective, being single, the fact that he says he's a Christian, you almost have to say, show me. Don't just take that as a word, because people are out there looking for Christian women that are vulnerable to what their demise is. So really, as a single person, I would say, don't get a hallelujah just because he says he's a Christian. Let him show you that he's a Christian.
And I will also add to that, even if he's in the church.
Yes.
Don't just fall for the okie doke because, oh, he goes to church every Sunday. Look, there's a whole lot of me praying on women in the church, you know, and got a cross around the neck too and carrying a 10-pound Bible. Don't mean nothing. You know what I mean? You still got to check all that out. And there's sisters in the church.
Yes.
Who not about the right business as well.
And it's vice versa.
Yeah, same thing. Looking for what? So that's all in there. So again, coming in with coming up with some more questions regarding from singles. Here's the one. I hear in church that we aren't supposed to live together before marriage, but I need to test drive before I say I do. Now, I consider that good research before making a life decision. And they said, how is that wrong? I need to test drive because I'm going to make a life decision.
not a matter of if it's wrong, it's a matter of what happens if that other person is doing the same thing and now they're on the 5th test drive. What type of car are you really going to get after test driving it for 5 different situations? You know, we have to be real about this and look at, you know,
Oh boy.
what are you trying to get out of this and what are you expecting? Because if both of you are doing a whole lot of test driving, you might not ever get to the point where you're going to buy the car.
Oh, anybody want to add to that one? What you say to that? I hear crickets. Go ahead, on me.
Well, I mean, he makes a valid point. He makes a valid point. But I mean, knowing what I know now,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, that's what sways my answer to that question.
Yeah.
Because of what I know now. And so, like, my grandmother used to always say, when you know better, you do better.
Right.
And
That's
so,
right.
That's it.
That's the
knowing
answer.
what I know now,
We wouldn't have test drove.
we would not have test driven, no.
Amen.
We have not, and that would have saved us. That would have saved us some years, probably in the beginning of our marriage of being real hectic if we didn't know better. If we had known better and not test drove and got into this relationship, and just like Kim just said, you know, what we know now, we wouldn't have test drove.
Right.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah, it's like you said, what you know now. It's a whole learning process, and the thing of it is that when you definitely when you look at our culture today, it's almost like we have become totally desensitized to cohabitation. Totally, it's almost like expected for you to live together before you say I do. It's almost you know, it's everything has totally changed as far as being in contradiction to what, you know, the boundaries that are set in scripture for us. And so there is a thing where the church has to I shouldn't say compete, but you just have to be, all that we can do is just teach what the word of God says. And then after that, that's between the person and the Lord. And that's all we can do at that particular point. So the next question, again, is dealing with singles. And evidently this person has kids. And so here's the question. For singles, how do you maintain a relationship with a person when you feel like one of the kids doesn't really like you? I'm assuming the relationship must be, for example, how do you maintain a relationship with a person you feel like one of the kids? They must be saying that the person that they're dating, they must have a child that doesn't like them.
Yeah.
All right. How are we going to address that?
It's a red flag.
Go ahead, David. Put it out there.
The red flag. The kids are a package. Like if the communication, the relationship between the other person and the kids is not working, it's a red flag. Because if it's just starting, to be honest, it's probably going to keep going. The certain, you know, as the relationship continues.
Until you put a stop.
Yeah, that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm. Right. I see you guys nodding in the head in agreement. Definitely. And any other input with that?
I'm straddling the fence on it.
Okay.
Because I guess I would have to, I'm straddling the fence with that, because I think with respect, I would first of all have to question the age of the children. Because you do have situations where if the child doesn't like whoever it is that their parent has connected with, it depends on that child's parent. What is being poured into that child to make that child feel like they don't like whoever it is their mother or father has taken an interest to. You know what I mean? Right. So I would have to question the age of the child.
Right.
that
That's
could
correct.
go, that could have a gray area.
Well, I just gotta add it to that. The relationship has been 10 years.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Well, I
Yeah.
would also add, have you talked about it? And is the person just putting up a blind eye to it that is existing? You know, you can't,
If you've been
Are
in it
you
for
free?
10 years,
yeah.
That's a topic.
that changed the whole,
Yeah, that's a whole different
Yeah.
topic.
that's a
Yeah.
whole other topic right here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's not
that's-
just
So
beginning
they're
with,
forcing,
yeah, it's not just starting. If it's been 10
No.
years and perhaps there is some manipulation going on with the child to keep that marriage from going on,
relationship.
or the relationship period to be going on, because we can attest that kids can try to manipulate the relationship. Where, you know, we have a blended family, and we've had experiences where because of either the mother saying things that, you know, where the child did not have to respect me, or, you know, on the other end, another child adored their father so much where they didn't have to respect Damon. So it was manipulation on both parts. And once again, that united front has to come up to be, you know, just to show that we're not having it.
Yeah.
That's a good segue into talking about blended families too. But before we get there on the blended families, I would just venture to say, if you've been in a relationship with someone for 10 years and you're saying this is as far as this relationship has gotten because of a child, I would venture to say the issue is not the child.
Right.
There's something else. The fact that you're still in a relationship for 10 years and when nobody walked down that aisle yet, there has not been a commitment. There are other underlying issues, and that child could possibly be just a segment or just a portion of what may be keeping you from saying I do. There was another person who asked, is there a timeline for dating? Is 5 years too much? I think it depends on your age on that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a timeline, but
Yeah.
the key is you have to date with a purpose.
Yes.
Right.
You know, where are we going with this? What's going on? And then as you get serious with it, then you start getting those other questions, which nobody likes to talk about, but it is, you know, where are you at in your career? You know, what is your credit looking like? Is it going to take 5 years to clean up your credit? I mean, you have to figure out where are we going with the relationship.
And that's a good point. So let's talk about that briefly before we segue over to talking about the blended families. And that is how is preparing for the marriage, is preparing, you know, what do you need to do for preparing for the relationship? You just said something that was very key, Pastor Darrell, that sometimes we don't pay attention to. I know we do it in our couples counseling, premarital counseling, and that is, what is your credit score? How do you manage your money?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We should know that before we walk down the aisle. You know,
Even while you're dating, in a
yes,
way.
exactly. Why are you dating? You know, because those are things that impact you once you say I do. And those are sometimes some of the questions that we don't get to. And, you know, and your point is to date with a purpose. I mean, are we just in this relationship just kicking it because we ain't got nothing else to do? Or where are we going with this? Where are we going? What are we going to do? And that takes a serious conversation to be had.
And you have to have that if after you find yourself, let's just say, I'll just give it a year. After you're spending a lot of time with this person at a year, and the years are adding up, you do need to define that and have that hard question or that critical question or conversation as to where is this leading us? We've spent a year. And I think it's okay to ask that at any point, you know, you have 6 months of my time. Where do you want this to go?
Right. And to be honest in the conversation.
Yes.
You know, just to be honest in the conversation as to where we're heading. You know, are we going to just try to be together for the rest of our days, or you know what we're doing? You know,
you can basically tell, like, when you're dating somebody, if they go to work. You tell when people pay their bills, just little things like gas in their car. it's just little things that you can tell in a relationship whether or not that person is worth investing the time. You can't go into a relationship saying, let's have a year plan, a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan. You have to go in from the very beginning saying, okay, what are we doing here? What's the expectation? What are you looking to get out of this relationship? And if you figure out that this is going to work, then you start working towards the goal. When you start working towards the goal, there has to be progress. You can't be the same way a year from now. You can't be in the same spot you were a year from the day you started. It has to be progress. And that communication piece is big. Like, it doesn't matter if your credit is good, bad. You have to be honest about it. You have to say, this is what I'm doing to better the situation. You know, this is where I like to see myself in order for us really to get together. This is what I have to do. And allow that person to make that decision whether or not they want to be a part of that, or you guys can conquer that together.
Right, and deal with those challenges together. All right, so we're going to move over to talking about blended families, because that was definitely a question that came up. And Tomne, you really helped to take us to that segue there. Would you just sharing with us again, you said it earlier, how did you and Damon begin that whole process? And also, Kim, you had mentioned last week about your son and when you met Greg and so forth. So how did you begin that blending process? And what were some of the challenges that you faced, Tomne?
I'll let you start.
So we dated for a couple months, and then eventually he met my daughter, Brittany, and then I met his daughter, Amani. Everything was good until we got married. A lot of challenges came into play. One parent distanced themselves from the child, where the other parent forbid the other parent from seeing that child. So we had pretty much started having some turmoil after we said I do, pretty much. We had to go to court for a couple of times for one parent for visitation rights. But at the same time, we also had one child who manipulated the relationship, who, just was like, okay, well, this is how I am. This is how it's going to be. And me being a mother, I straddled with that because I felt like I had to choose sides between my husband and my child. But so it was rather challenging, but in the end, with lots of prayer, with lots of, Pastor Kay, I don't know if you remember, but we came to you one time when we had a challenge with our daughter, and you pretty much told us, look, she playing y'all, just straight like that. I don't know if you remember that, but that's what you told us. And we was like, oh, okay, it's like, she's pretty much playing y'all. She know what she can get out of one person and know what she can get out the other. So she's just pretty much, manipulating the situation. And that was an aha moment for us. And that's where that whole United Front came in. And as hard as it was to stay away from the discipline, like Damon disciplining, like, just because me being a single mother up until Brittany turned 7, and then for another man outside of her father to come in and to discipline, it was a challenge for me. But through it all, we make it work. We made it work. God is good, and he made it happen. So where we're all together, we're all a family, and it's good right now, and we're grateful.
You guys definitely, show the epitome of a blended family. But I want to go back to what you were just saying, because it was a whole process that you had to go through. And what you said was another question that did come up from one of our person who wrote in. And that was back with the thing when you said you were having an issue at first with Damon disciplining your child because that's your child. And so the person that asked the question, doesn't my child come before my husband? We're talking about we're in a blended family. The child is not the husband's child, but in your, like your case, the husband needed to discipline. How did you come to that recognition, if you will, of I'm okay for Damon to bring correction? Because you said you struggle with that. How did you get there? How were you able to get there?
It was a trust thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I seen how he not only interacted with his daughter, but he also interacted with Brittany, I felt comfortable
Mm-hmm.
in prayer.
Mm-hmm.
In prayer, I pretty much had to set myself aside, even literally remove myself from the situation. Like if I see that Brittany was doing something that she knew she didn't have no business doing, and Damon was correcting her, telling her, look, you wrong or what have you, I literally had to go downstairs in the basement, seriously, to take myself out of the equation so that way I would not interfere. Because if I had interfered, then that would have been her like, oh yeah, I got mommy. I know Ma got my back. So I'm just gonna go and do that. So the more I literally removed myself from the environment and the situation, and I wouldn't go back and correct his wrong, per se, then eventually I became comfortable with it.
Right. How long were you, you and Brittany, you were twosome before Damon. How long was that?
7 years.
So do you think that may have had an impact on why you were quite protective and needing to, because it just was the two of you for 7 years?
Right. I mean, her father was around, but as far as living together,
right,
it was just us, it was just us two before I left my mom's house. But absolutely, yes. It was nothing that, and I'm not saying I thought she was the perfect child. I'm not saying that, but yes, I did protect her because it was just us two. And that's all we knew when we were living together. So for, and I kind of seen her part too, for somebody, another man coming in because she did not have a male figure in the house. You understand what I'm saying? For another male to come in and start dictating what's going to be done in the house and what should be done. I can understand her being like, well, wait a minute, hold on. My mother was the one who laid the ground rules and everything. So, yeah.
Gotcha. All right, Kim, great.
Yeah, I think we were fortunate in our, relationship. We still went through some struggles as far as blended family. But the one good thing, our sons were about the same age, and one of them was, what, 3?
They were 3 and 4.
3 and 4, and they loved hanging with each other. They loved playing with each other. So that kind of made that made it kind of dwell together. But when I, first met Kim, Kyle, he didn't want anything to do with me. He was, all about his dad, which, that's my son, was about his dad. But he didn't want anything to do with us. And going back to what Kim said, you know better, you do better. If you know better, you would do better. Some things I probably would have done a lot better in the beginning, but I think what had happened, I just had to come to with Kyle, I had to just continue to, not be stern, but just gain his trust with me. And it took a while, you know what I mean? It took a while. It took a good while that I ended up gaining this trust, and I wouldn't do one for one that I wouldn't do for the other. So I had to kind of make sure that was clear with them. If I tell you to do it, I'm not going to tell him don't do it. So it had to be, you know, that was a good part because they see, okay, he's not doing, but in a sense, it was still a bad part because if I did this one for this, I did this, you know, so I was, you know what I mean? I was almost kind of in a competition thing, you know, if, you know, and that's like I said, if you know better, you do better.
Right.
Kyle Dad would buy him something, then I would go out and, you know, try to do the same thing.
Right.
And, you know, just trying to be in competition. I was young. We were young in marriage. It was a lot of growth that we had to go through as far as on our side as parents and the other parent's side. And I feel like, you know, now that I'm, you know, grown and adult and I look back at the situation, I look at it like, man, we wasted a lot of time. If we could have just came together as 4 parents of these kids, or if they even have relationships, the whole bunch, which we end up doing eventually, you know what I mean? We're, you know, you know, we don't go out and drink tea or anything like that together, but we're friends, you know. I say we're friends. And I think if we had did that in the beginning, but we were young, a lot of us, we were still immature in a lot of things. So we had to grow. So if we could have waited, I look back now, we could have wasted a lot of, we wasted a lot of time, you know, fighting amongst each other when we could have just been pouring into our kids and just showing them this big, happy, you know, group working together to help them grow.
You just said a lot right there. Definitely when it comes to baby mamas and baby daddies, you know, where you do see that battle, that conflict. And how you said you guys got it together. How did you, or how would you tell someone how to deal with that difficult parent, you know, that the baby mama or the baby daddy who just don't want to act right and just all up in your business and just creating chaos? What advice would you give to help that person who may be facing that?
Well, I can speak on the father side. I just kind of started, you know, I had to open up, and I always remember that was his dad first. And I'm not taking his place as his dad, but I had to kind of show him that I could be friends with his dad. And once I think me and him became not buddies, but we showed cordialness to each other. And then to the point where I would even invite him to things at the house, and he would come to, you know, parties, you know, birthday parties. So we made everybody, you know, that on that side a part of it. So it was able to, you know, it was able to kind of loosen it up a little bit. And my son look at it and be like, oh man, I got 2 pops. I got the best of 2 worlds. I got 2 pops, you know? So, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Damon?
Well, I was gonna say, you know, for me, I just had to do my part. I couldn't really be overly concerned about what he was going to do or what he had done. I had to be more focused on building a relationship with Brittany to say, okay, this is where we at. I married your mom. This is our family right here in this house. You know, when it came to being responsible for certain things, I just took it and owned it. Now, if he stepped in and he made certain things happen, cool, that was a bonus. But if he didn't, I felt like I could not see her without. I felt like she was my daughter. I need to make sure that I provided for her. I need to make sure that she felt safe. And, you know, it's part of growth because you have to let kids see on their own what this parenting thing is about. Because if you go around, you know, saying this person is that, this person that, now you're talking bad to their mother or father. You have to let them learn themselves. And then they begin to get a better respect and a better understanding of you. And then they realize as they get older, the sacrifice that you made for them, and they start to appreciate it. And it's like, I mean, Brittany's 26 now. And, you know, I guess it was a few years ago. It was some years ago, you know, she called me and she was just like, hey, Dad. And I thought that was really cool because I knew we had got to a good place. Now, if somebody say something about me, she ready to fight. Like, she literally, you can't say nothing bad about my dad. That's my dad, whatever. And, me and her will talk, throughout the day, and she like, hey, dad, what's up? What's good? So it just takes time for that relationship and that bond to take place. But you cannot bad talk the other parent. You just got to let it roll the way that it's supposed to roll. Is it stressful? Is it hard? Yes, it is. It's a lot of, you feel uncomfortable about a lot of certain things. Yes, it's there. But you got to move forward. You got to provide. You got to give them that sense of security, and you got to keep it moving.
Yeah, that was really a good point what you just made there. I mean, all of what you were saying, but just looking at doing what's best for the child and just make it work. Make it work because it's all about the child anyway. And moving past and just deal with it. And don't speak and that was so key. Don't speak badly to your child about their parent. Just take that off, regardless how you may feel. You might not can stand each other guts, but don't say that in front of him.
Right.
All right. So
anyway.
Go ahead, Tom name.
Oh no, I was just saying because the truth will be revealed in the end anyway.
Uh-huh. I'll do this one. All right. So this is in reference to should single couples seek counseling, even if they don't have any problems?
They're saying seek counseling. I mean, what are they seeking counseling? Is that to get married, to stay successfully dating? I guess what's their goal?
They don't ask that question. They don't say the question. So maybe if we were, excuse me, my allergies are flaring up. So let's kind of put the question: should single couples seek counseling? Let's say they're not engaged.
Okay.
Let's say they're not engaged, they're dating.
Yeah, if a single couple came to us and a couple and a half, and they talked about communication issues and things like that, I mean, we'll give them the information that they need to be better communicators. But one thing we let them know is, until there's a true commitment and an end result, there's nothing binding to allow that communication to lead toward anything. So again, we can share all that information, but my line is yes, I think they should. But if there's no end goal or end result, it's just nothing there that's holding that relationship together. And they can move out at any time. And that's just kind of could be seen as a waste.
So getting back to dating with a purpose.
Be a purpose, because
you got to be able to
talking to a couple, and I was like, what you're expecting from him is what you expect from a husband.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? He's not your husband yet. So why are you jealous about him being with other women? And there's no commitment there.
Okay. I'm getting a question here. What is that? Okay. Well, they just added on to that they plan to get married. Well, then that means that they're dating with a purpose. So
that makes a difference.
Yeah, that's a difference then if you're planning to get married.
Absolutely. In that situation, definitely should do it because they put themselves in a better position to have a healthier marriage earlier versus later.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
We strongly, to whoever asked that question, at First Christian, we strongly promote having counseling, premarital counseling. In fact, we won't do the wedding unless you have gone through premarital counseling themselves, because this marriage thing is serious. And sometimes people entering into the marriage with in the back of their mind, if it doesn't work, it doesn't fit, I can roll up out of there. And that's not what this is about. Marriage is a covenant, and it is an example or symbolism, I should say, of Christ in the church. That's how serious this marriage is, and that's why it's serious about going through good premarital counseling. Couples that are hesitant, or a mate that is hesitant about coming to counseling, I think I mentioned this last week, I'm very cautious of that. because you should want to learn as much as you can about the other person and about their situation, because there's just so many things that you guys cover in the premarital session, right? Can you just name some of them? I mean, even talking about, the intimacy, all of those things are important. The finances, what the relationship was like with your parents, and even as far as role models are concerned, all of that is crucial as you're preparing to walk down that aisle. And so we're really big on that premarital thing. And so
most importantly, they get they will learn some tools to help when there's conflicts in the long run, currently and later on.
yes,
To build on their foundation.
yes, that was something that in the prayer from Angela and Bruce, when we were talking about, it's just not just the good times, but how do you handle the not so good times? How do you handle those storms that come into your marriage? Because the storm is going to come in some form or fashion. And how do the two of you ride that storm out? That was another question that came up in light of this quarantine that we're in. We just saw an article that was sent to us from Pastor DeCosta, where there is an increase in people filing for divorce from being in quarantine. So being close and 24/7 is definitely telling you some things about your mate. How are you? I know you, Pastor Darrell and Veronica, I know you two are in the house together, working from home. But Damon, you're still out, right? And
Yes.
Tomne, you still out.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know, Greg, you're still out.
Yes.
Right. How are you guys doing, Darrell and Veronica?
For me, and like I was sharing with Greg the other day, for me, it's all about the approach. Like, yes, I could get up and just wear, shorts and a t-shirt all day, but, I want to look good across from her when she's working and looking up like, is that cologne I smell? Like, why is he putting on cologne? I go all out because this is my wife. This is my best friend. Regardless, I'm sitting across from her. My whole mindset is I'm at work, but now I have an advantage. I don't know how long it's going to last, that she can see me at work. So I want her to see me. I want her to smell me. I want her to know that's my man. And he's not just getting up looking any type of way. It seems like it's small, but I'm telling you, it's big dividends with that.
That's so true.
Like, talking about the dividends.
Yes,
Like an investment.
absolutely.
And I actually do the same. The other day I was on a Zoom call, and instead of my coworkers being focused on our meeting in the beginning to start the meeting, they're like, "Oh, Veronica, why are you so dressed up? Why is your hair done? We all have issues, And I was able to say, well, I work right across from my husband, and I just can't get up and look any old kind of way. Plus, I prepare as if I'm going to work, because our home now has become our workplace. So I won't get so relaxed and so torn away from what I'm purposely trying to do, in addition to letting our kids realize that this is now their school place, so just making sure that we treat it as that. So our quarantine together has not been any issues, because we've also set a boundaries, and we also talked about, okay, now that we're home, how are we going to set this up? So we took time to even to plan it and make goals and objectives, not just for us, but for our kids as well.
Right. And what you're saying, even though we were laughing, but we could get with it, you know what I mean? And because what I'm hearing is that marriage takes work.
Yes.
And it's a labor of love. And you just have to keep, you have to work. You have to work for it. You have to go that extra. Yeah.
To create
Or
the
his eyes
environment.
are stayed on you.
Say that again, Tomne.
Make sure his eyes are stayed on you.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So that means, ladies and gent, you got to try to keep yourself together as much as you can. Them onesie pajamas you putting on at night. You
Get rid
need,
of your onesies.
you need to do something with that, and that's, don't put it on. Don't wear that to your. Let's not do that.
Right.
If you're gonna tie your hair up, make sure it's cute. I'm just saying. Give me some
It doesn't
advice.
have to be anything. I mean, you just want to feel good too. You do what makes
Yeah.
you feel good, you know.
Yeah. Don't be still wearing that same old raggedy nightgown.
Oh no, I have to hide that.
And wearing socks to bed because your feet cold.
That's right. Right.
Can I say the quarantine for the quarantine is, I'm gonna go back to what we were talking about earlier. Where, you know, with one good thing about the quarantine with us is we were kind of prepared for it. I still go out. Kim had, you know, left her job probably a year prior. So it was already, you know, she was doing school and, you know, working her nonprofit. So we were already pretty much in this type of lifestyle prior to it happening. And I think, you know, what's really good about it now, I'm going back to my grandmother's day. So I come home and guess what's ready for me? Dinner's ready.
I know that's right.
Situation here. But this quarantine also has brought us together, you know, even more, you know what I mean? Because we dependent on each other for our daughter, for us, you know what I mean? So it's brought us together even more because, hey, we live over here on the Eastern Shore. So it's like, you know, we don't have the family, or I have my mother here, but, you know, the other family members or anything like that. So we just, you know, everything is just dependent on us, you know what I mean? Is we backing off each other.
Right.
So it's been, you know, I found a big blessing in this whole quarantine as far as my relationship.
Yeah. And for, you know, just for those who are going through those struggles, and like I say, heading for divorce court, the quarantine didn't put you there. You were, I would say those couples were already having problems and issues before the quarantine. And so that just compounded, you know, where we're going.
They were able to have those hallway conversations, like you said, you know what I mean? Going to work and coming home, they were able to just see each other, hey, what's up, and keep it moving. Where now it's like you're confined in the house with this individual, which changed the dynamics of everything. Because now you can't avoid because they're there.
Exactly.
I'm excited to come home every day.
Yeah, and the thing about with us is even though we leave home, we appreciate even the more coming back to each other.
That's good.
We appreciated each other coming home daily, but during this quarantine, we just, you know, really appreciate the fact and blessed that we are able to see each other again and spend time with each other. And Damon's job is very demanding, but with this, the work has been less.
Can you hear us, Damon? Let me, you guys froze up on me.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. We just appreciate, you know, Damon's job is very demanding. So I appreciate the fact that the workload has become less. And we're actually sitting, enjoying service on Sundays together, as opposed to, you know, there were times where he could not make Sunday services because of the demand of his job. So it's been good for us as well.
You know, that's so refreshing to hear from all three of you guys, that you look forward to your mate. You look forward to coming home. You look forward to being with each other. You're taking your time to dress and to be presentable because you want to look good for your mate. That just speaks volumes. And I just hope that everyone who's online here and those who will be listening in later on will take that piece right there, that a good relationship is one that you have to work for, but it's one that you enjoy being with the person. The question you need to ask yourself, if you're getting ready to tie the knot or whatever, would you love coming home to this person? Do you look forward to it? And you have to keep the work, you have to keep up. You know, as you're saying, Pastor Bill, how long you guys been married again?
1 year.
How many they get? 20?
21.
21 years. And we still want to make sure we're looking good for each other. How long you been Damon and Tom Nay again?
18 years.
18 years. And you're still excited about coming home and wanting to spend time with each other. And you, Kim and Greg, how long it's been?
It'll be 28 next month.
28.
Woo.
Wow. Y'all got married young.
Yes, we did.
And you still look where you are, you know, and she cooking for you now. Got your food
That's
ready.
right.
Come through the door.
I even cut his grapefruit for him like his grandmother used to do. For him in the sections and put the sugar on it like his grandmother used to do.
I remember that.
Greg, you got your good shoes on, ready for dinner.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, anyway, I see some of the folks here. They have definitely been, they are really appreciative of everything that you guys are saying. How we know if we would love coming home? If we can't test drive. Okay, so this is a MIT asking this question. How would we know we love coming home to them if we can't test drive and live together, PK?
But when you're dating, you're spending that time before now. You're going out, you're seeing if this is your friend, if this is someone that you're, even when you're dating, you know if you want to be around this person. It's the fun that you have, it's getting to know the individual, the time that you're taking to get to know each other.
Right. If you date right, you're absolutely right. If you date right, you're gonna know in advance.
Absolutely.
Were you on the phone with them?
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things, are you on the phone? You can't be together right now, but are you falling asleep on the phone with them? You know,
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that. Yeah, things like that. You know, I remember, you know, when me and Kim first met, you know, if I couldn't see, I was on the phone with her.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh man, I have to have this lady in my life. Yep.
And then too, what's their definition of test driving? You know what I mean? Because if you're dating, you're test driving. What's your definition of test driving? Like what are you talking about when you say test drive? Because you have to be specific about that too. You know what I mean? Some people take test driving as having sex.
I think that's what's being meant. But
Yeah.
She said she was kidding. But when the first question came out, I want to say me MIT, she did come back. She said, I was really kidding, PK. I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
I know you were kidding because you wouldn't have put it out there.
Because you're test driving when you're dating.
But yeah, when people are talking test driving, the way I'm taking it and when I've heard it, they mean about sleeping together. They're sexually compatible.
Yeah.
And we do get that a lot in our relationship coach. But one thing I tell people is, you know, a relationship on earth is just like a relationship with God. You know, you're not going to know everything. It's a good mystery.
Yes.
That's the blessing that people don't realize. It's a mystery and you're figuring each other out. You're figuring out, oh, wow, I didn't know you like it that way. Or I didn't know that you do this. I mean, that's the great part about those long marriages, because every year you're building, you're adding, you're learning more. And one thing I'll never forget, one of the gentlemen that sits in the back where we used to sit, older gentleman, wife passed away, and he came to me after church. He said, Pastor Darrell, how's everything going? I'm like, I'm doing good, sir. How are you doing? He's like, I'm doing fine. I'm making it. But one thing he said, I've never forgot. He said, man, I love looking at you and your family. I love how you look at your wife. And he said, take it from somebody who lost the love of their life after, you know, being married 30-some years, that you miss everything about those little challenges. He said, don't take any of that for granted.
Wow.
And that's good words. That's a good word. And that's a good one to close out on. And I echo that to you, Kim and Greg, and to Tom Nay, and to Damon, and to all of the couples who are on this line here and looking forward to it. When you got a good one, and I'm not saying a good one won't make mistakes. I'm not saying a good one won't make you want to smack them sometime. I'm not saying that. But when you, sometimes with love, you have to have more than love. You have to have commitment. And you cannot go off of feelings, because feelings are fickle. But when you have someone that you really love, you will go through the storm with them. And you just trust God, whatever that storm may be, and just hold on to each other. And that's what I'm seeing with you guys in front of us. When you found the love of your life, when you got your soulmate, you hold on to them and treasure every single moment that you have with them. The good, the bad, the not so good, the stuff that just make you laugh, the stuff that make you frown, the stuff that make you go like, oh my God, where would that come from? But just treasure all of that. Take it from me. Just treasure all of those moments together that you have, and just keep on loving each other. And that goes for all of you guys who are out there on Facebook land. And, you know, if you found that one, you hang on to that one. And you just work it out. If you're in your marriage right now and you may be going some difficult times, my question to you, just put your stuff to the side. And only one question I want to ask you is, do you love that person? You may not like them right now, but do you love them? And if you love each other, because it's a two-way street, it takes both of you. If both of you can still say, yes, I do love this person, I do want to make this work, I promise you, if you trust God with it, it will work. Your marriage will survive. And not only will it survive, it will thrive. But you got to make sure God is in the picture. But the two of you have to be committed to the relationship. And so you have some role models right here in front of you. And they're ministers in the church. And so I can say, if you have questions regarding blended families, if you have questions regarding dating, you can go to them. You can just inbox them, go to them, and as they came on here sharing. So again, thank you so much, couples, for spending tonight with us. Oh, look at that. That's sweet. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really enjoyed having this conversation, and I hope everybody else online, which I think they enjoyed as well. So we'll be back Sunday morning. And let me just add this PSA, First Christian. You know, the governor announced today that effective 5:00 p.m. on Friday, that churches can open back up at 50% capacity. We're not opening, okay? We need everybody to stay home and stay safe. We do have a plan. We're putting together a plan. We're not making you any promises when this is going to happen for us, because our whole key here is we're going to pay attention to science, and we're paying attention. First, let me put it this way. We're paying attention to what Jesus says, and because Jesus is the creator of science, we're listening to science as well. And so we're going to be following that. So we will give you further information, but no, we're not coming back at 50% capacity on Sunday. So meet us here 10 o'clock Sunday morning, right here on Facebook Live or on your app. Meet us again here next week. We're going to have a great conversation, and this is with all of the pastors at First Christian. We'll be meeting, and we're going to be talking about what First Christian may be looking like after this quarantine. And then the following week, we have more conversations that will be coming up, and we'll be posting that so you can see it. So thank you again. God bless each and every one of you guys. You stay safe. Don't y'all go down Ocean City, and everybody be good. God bless you. Good night. And see you Sunday morning. Take care.
Right.